Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my February wrap-up where I wrap up the last half of the month for you. I am playing around with my background. I don't know how I feel about this, but let me know if you like this setup. I have never filmed right here, I don't think. I think one time I hurt my back a couple years ago and I pulled my chair over here and filmed, but other than that, I don't think I filmed like completely with this behind me. I can't even tell like what books you're seeing, but let me know if you like this or you prefer my other way more. I'm just trying new things out. So I'm here with my wrap up. I only have 10 books to wrap up. To be fair, there were only 14 days to wrap up in this month for the second half, and I'm filming this on the last day and I am in the middle of 2 books. So this could have easily been 12, but I also went out of town to Disney with some friends, so that took up a lot of reading time. So I have 10 books to share with you, so this should not be too long. I will link the first half of my wrap up down below if you're interested in checking it out. I read 15 books for that part of the month, so I still read a lot this month, but I'll go ahead and get to the books that I read. So the first book that I read was for my Patreon book club. I had QB Tyler on and we chatted about Saint by Sierra Simone, and this book, this was the first time that I had actually read by ebook and audiobook simultaneously, meaning I didn't like sit there and read it while listening to it. I would read it as an ebook when I was able to sit down and read, and then I would switch to the audio when I was driving or doing a puzzle or cleaning. So I used both formats to read this, and I loved doing that because the audiobooks for the series are a completely other experience than reading it physically. So I actually had put down book 2. I talked about it in the previous wrap up for February. I picked up book 2 physically and stopped and put it down for months, and then picked it up again in audio from the beginning. Absolutely amazing. This one is so good. So this one is an MM romance between our hero, who is one of the Bell brothers, and his brother's best friend. And now his brother actually dated the best friend's sister in the previous book, so we got to see a little bit of them in Sinner, but this one has to deal with a lot. So heavy trigger warnings for suicide and thoughts of suicide, and it was really hard to read. And I will say though that Sierra Simone is so thoughtful in how she writes about it, that she wrote about that unlike any other author I've seen, and really puts into perspective the mindset of someone in that situation and how other people in their lives deal with it, how they talk about it with other people in their lives. And so our hero in this one decides to become a monk because that is the only way he can find peace in his life. And so it's a second chance romance, which is also one of my absolute favorite tropes, and this one absolutely blew me away. So this is Aiden's story, and Aiden and Elijah were together before, but then Aiden, something happens where he needs to find a safe space and somewhere that he finds peace. He becomes a monk, and this is his journey being a monk, and Elijah coming in to write an article about them because they actually have a brewery and like make beer, which was really cool. And then they end up having to go around to other monasteries in Europe together, and Elijah's writing an article about it, and Aiden is trying to find like a place he might want to live, and they fall in love again. And it's so emotionally heartbreaking, this book. So stunning. The writing is stunning. Everything about this book was just all-consuming. I read it in a day. I was working that day and I read it in a day, so I could not put this book down. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. Then Tori and I are doing a read-along for the Nashville Star series by Ava Hunter. So we did read the first 2 books this month, and the first one is Sing You Home. This author has potential. I watched Tori's wrap-up. I can link it down below if you want to watch, and she had like put it into words exactly how I feel. So this author is writing a small-town romance series with suspense, and this one so far is my favorite of the series. I gave it 3.5 stars. There's a lot that still needs to be fleshed out, and I feel like if she had a better content editor, she would be able to flesh those things out because she has so many amazing pieces to her books. We have great romance, great backstory, great plot. It's just the way that it's woven together isn't that seamless, and there's a lot of missing pieces, especially in book 2 with the suspense. So in this one, our heroine, I love the setup. She is living with a man she thinks is her husband, but she was actually in a plane accident about a year before with her actual husband, who is a Nashville star, and he is devastated. He thinks that she died. They searched for months for her and could not find her and have her announced dead. So she's actually been living with someone who basically kidnapped her to be his wife. So this starts out with her escaping, running into the hero's brother, and being brought back home. So it's an amnesia romance. She doesn't remember who she is, has to fall back in love with her husband, and then the person that kidnapped her does come into the picture a little later. So that is the romance that takes place. It's pretty much a second chance because she's learning to fall back in love with him, and that wasn't really that hard for her. I would have liked a little bit more angst in the romance where she took a bit of time to fall in love. Now, I did think the way that the brother talked about her, I thought she was gonna fall in love with the brother, and I got really, really excited. I was like, is she gonna be married and get amnesia and then fall in love with her like husband's brother? That would have been amazing. So it didn't turn out that way, and I was like a little disappointed, but overall this was a really fun book, and I would have liked a little bit more with it, especially with the romantic suspense that came in at the end. I think a little bit more build up to that and a little bit more suspense to that would have made it even stronger. So the author does have potential. I think this was her first book she ever wrote, so I'm glad that I read it, and I'm more excited though for books 3 and 4 in the series. Then I read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I do teach this to my honors 10th graders. It is about a tribe in Nigeria in the early 1900s and Europeans coming to colonize them. So I don't rate this book, but I did read it, so I wanted to add it to my wrap up. But check it out if that sounds interesting to you. I do teach it every year, so this was like my 9th time reading this book, so I really like it. Then immediately after Sing You Home, I read Find You Again by Ava Hunter. This one is book 2 in the series, and this one is actually about Alabama, who is the country star, and he is also a country star, but he's not part of the band that the hero in book 1 is. So Alabama is the one that tried to get Luke, the hero of book 1, to kiss her publicly for a certain reason. So that was when Luke was married, and that caused like a lot of contention in their marriage. So this one is her story, and so she is painted the villain in the media. Of course she is, because she's the woman in the situation. She's villainous. She's the one that's being like loose in her ways, and everybody is tearing her down for it, and Luke gets no repercussions, or the guy that helps her set it up has no repercussions. So she's facing that. But it's a second chance romance with someone that she fell in love with in the past, and I wanted so much more from their past. I feel like I didn't feel that connection between them, that they were madly in love before. I would have loved to see more scenes of that and understanding that. And the hero today is a really big country star, and she is invited to open his tour, and she doesn't like him because they didn't end on good terms, but they start falling for each other again, and she has to learn to trust him, and then they start writing music together, which I really enjoyed, but the suspense in here made no sense. It was like thrown in there just to have suspense. It was not built up whatsoever. The scene itself was missing so many components to it that I'm like, well, where's this person now, and how did this person get caught, and how did this all wrap up? So nothing was like seamlessly put together in the suspense, because I've been loving romantic suspense, so I was like, there's just too much missing in here. I had to reread the scene a couple times because I was like, how did they even like catch her? Like, how did she stop doing things? So I needed more from this book. I gave it 3 stars. I still really liked the second chance aspect. I liked how they were writing music together and they returned home, but there was also like loose ends with her dad's plot line where I feel like she forgave her father way too quickly, and of course there was also a bet plot thrown in there. That was the third act breakup, which I hate bet conflicts. Like, they had made a bet about getting with the heroine and then she finds out and then she gets mad. I don't like those plots. So that's one included that one too. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Then I am trying to read a Nora Roberts book a month. So I listened to the audiobook of The Witness, and this one is the one I was most excited for because people absolutely love this book. I think I went in with too high expectations. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I think this heroine I absolutely loved, but the plot was a little too boring. So I learned my lesson. I'm gonna stick with Nora physically. This audiobook was 16 hours. That's very long for me. I have a really hard time listening to really long audiobooks. Like 12, 13 hours is the max I can do, or else I feel like I'm dragging through the book. And I listen to it at 3 times speed, but I only listen to a couple hours a day. So it takes me quite a few days to get through an audiobook, especially if it's really long. So this one, our heroine, she is very analytical. She has a endemic memory. I don't remember. She literally remembers every single thing she sees and hears. Like, it's a photographic memory, but like there's a different word for it. So she has that kind of memory. Her mother had like picked a sperm donor who was perfect to have a perfect child, and she was on track to like go to medical school and college when she was really young, and so she never gets to do anything. And so one night, she's a teenager, she decides to go to the mall, meets a girl and asks her to help her like shop, and then they decide to go to a club and meet some boys, and they end up being in the mafia. The guys do. And so they're brought back to their apartment and she witnesses a mafia murder and her best friend is murdered as well. So she freaks out, she runs away, runs to the cops, and then the mafia has ties to the police though. So she's in witness protection and she's on the run. So she has lived her life on the run for years. It's like 10 years now that she has taken on new identities. She's a hacker too, and so she makes most of her money through computer coding and things like that. And she is constantly on the watch for these mafia guys because they're want to kill her. So the hero is, I think he's a police officer in town and he's really intrigued by her. She is new to town, she doesn't talk to anybody, and she has like high level security and tons of weapons that she has registered to her name. And he's like, what the heck is up with this girl? So he goes to visit and then they start a friendship and then they fall for each other. The romance was a little lackluster to me. I feel like it was very insta-love, like they were really into each other after like a month and then like talking about marriage and stuff. I was like, this is a lot. And the suspense was missing. The beginning had great suspense, and it wasn't until like the last 100 pages where there was more suspense, and even then it wasn't exciting suspense. I was like, this had so much potential to have so much more suspense, but there was no like build up to the suspense. It was like, oh, we're gonna finally confront something, and so I'm gonna put myself in this situation, and then it's over really quickly. So I loved in The Obsession how there was someone that was murdering people the way her father was, and they're like, oh my gosh, is this guy gonna get me? And like, I love that build up of suspense throughout the whole book. This one, it just had in the beginning and it just had in the end, and I needed a lot more suspense in here. Like I said, I really love the heroine. She's one of my favorite heroines of Nora Roberts so far, but overall the story was just a little boring. It was drawn out too much, not a lot was happening, so I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I ended up reading Remember the Time, and I cannot see this author's name. Tay Monet is the author, so I ended up downloading this one on Audible because it was one of the Audible daily deals, and Caitlin from the Love Librarian was like, hey, it's Amnesia, like, did you see what the deal was? And I was like, immediately buy. It was like $2 or $3 for the Audible deal, so I bought it and I decided to listen to it this month. This one's pretty short, it's a 6-hour audio, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Our hero and heroine are engaged and she is pregnant and they are in a car accident where she loses the baby and loses her memory. And what happens actually is the parents kick the hero out and they're like, we hate you, you don't get our daughter, and this is all your fault, so you can't talk to her. And they basically like take their daughter back home, tell her she's engaged to someone else, and do not tell her about her other fiance. So the guy is devastated and he's like, I can't find her, like I can't be with her, like she obviously doesn't want to be with me if she hasn't contacted me. And the heroine a year later meets him again. She's like, who are you? So we have very villainous parent characters in here because they're the reason why her and the hero are kept apart. But I thought that was a pretty unique plot line, so I really enjoyed that. I do think the heroine though was a little bit naive in the fact that she was just like letting people pull her which way instead of like demanding answers once she learned about this fiance of hers that she had that she didn't know. She seemed a little bit too calm about things, but I think it was a really fun take on the amnesia romance, and she learned like to get along with her best friend again and like get in the life with the hero again, and I really love that, and like getting close to the hero's mom again and coming to terms with the fact that she lost a baby. So this one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. A really short, fun amnesia romance that I'm happy I picked up. Then I read The Choice by Ashley Jade, and this one, you guys, is one of my favorite books of the month. This one is angsty, and I knew going in though that it is a prequel basically to The Duet. So this is a spin-off from The Words, where it is 2 band members from The Words, one of which died in The Words, so we know that. So does Josh and Memphis, who grew up in the foster care system. Both of them have really horrible pasts. They're both abused and damaged, and they are damaged heroes, and they are starting it out in a new foster home, and they don't trust easily. They are blood brothers. They call themselves blood brothers. They have like a blood bond thing. They're the closest people to each other and they protect each other. They moved in next door to Skylar, our heroine, who we've met as the like manager in book 1. She takes care of like PR and stuff. So we know that Josh and Memphis are in this band together, and that Skylar is engaged to Josh and she's their PR manager, and Josh dies in The Words. So this is when they're in high school and Skylar is in a relationship with Josh. This is a situation though where obviously her soulmate is the other one, but she is dating the wrong guy, but she is for a certain reason. And the reason is because they are both so tortured and traumatized by their past that they feel like they are the only ones that can understand it. And she is thinking that Josh did something for her and she loves him for it. So Memphis though, she's incredibly attracted to and in love with, and Josh is a trash person. He has gone through a lot of trauma, but he is an absolute horrible person. Skylar puts up with a lot because she thinks she loves him and that he's the only one that can protect her from her own demons. It's very hard to read, but the angst in here, she is so in love with Memphis and Memphis is so in love with her, and I was obsessed. I read it in like a day and a half. I could not put it down. It is shorter. It's definitely shorter for Ashley Jade. She has still not released book 2 in the duet. It was supposed to come out a week later in January. It's now March. We still have no release date. We just gotta wait. And I heard book 2 is gonna be like 1,000 pages long, but I'm here for it. I'm so ready. If you love angst, messy love triangles, read this book. So then I did read my reread of A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I will have a reading vlog for this coming up soon. I read both of these. I tabbed both of them. I highlighted them. I did this because I'm doing a read along with some of my friends on YouTube. I only got to this one for the read along on Saturday, but Sunday and Monday I finished A Court of Mist and Fury and I'm not okay. I have not read these books since 2016? 2017? 2016. It's been so long since I've read these books. I'd only read this book once and I was not as amazed by it this time around. I lowered my rating to 4 stars. I was like consumed and obsessed the first time I read this, and this time it wasn't as impressive. I was like, this is a good story. We see Feyre falling in love with Tamlin. We see her with her trials against Amarantha, I think like the queen, and we meet Rhys. This was fine. It showed me the toxicity of Tamlin way more clearly the second time around, but this was fine. The way I knew what was going to happen and I was still flipping out the entire time I read this. I'd only read this one twice because I reread it before the release of ACOWAR back when it came out. So this is my 3rd time rereading it, but I have not, like I said, read it in like 6 years. So this was amazing. I'm obsessed. Feyre is so traumatized by what happened in book 1. Everybody is traumatized by what happened in book 1, and they are really trying to figure out how to live again and figure out the kind of people they've become and who they want in their lives. And so Feyre really examines her relationship with Tamlin and her new role in the Night Court. And I love this. I loved getting to meet the inner circle of Rhys again and understanding the past of everybody in this world, and I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed, and I already want to jump into book 3 because of the way this ended. Even though like I knew, I didn't remember what happened in book 2 versus book 3, and I was like, wait, this couldn't possibly happen in this book, and it did, and I was dead. Like the last 100 pages is so good. This is so fast-paced, action-packed. The romance is amazing. The emotions are amazing. Like this is perfection. Still one of my favorite fantasies of all time. 5 stars. I'm so happy I reread it. And the last book I read was The Enforcer by Avery Keelan. Everybody's been talking about Offside, but my library actually had this one. I think it's the first book in a different series, and this one is a second chance romance. We love those. And it's a hockey romance. So our heroine is actually like an athletic trainer student, and she is like at the top of the class, and she gets to put in for like basically like their internship, what team she wants to work with. She put in women's hockey and women's and men's basketball as her choices. But lo and behold, she gets placed with the men's hockey team. Their men's hockey team is their best sport, and they're putting the top of the class with their best sport. She has a past with one of the hockey players. They dated freshman year, and he broke her heart, and she hates him. And now she has to work closely with him because he is now one of her specific athletes that she has to work with. He has been fighting a shoulder injury that he hasn't really been telling anybody about, and she knows about that history, so they do have to work together on his shoulder injury, and they grow closer and have to travel together, lots of forced proximity. I really, really enjoyed this one. I did give it like 4.5 out of 5 stars because I do think it was a little too long and drawn out because this was a pretty long audiobook, but it was so good as a second chance. They end up adopting a puppy too that she finds and really have to unravel why he broke up with her and his own issues with his father, who is definitely emotionally abusive to him and very controlling, and he never opened up to her about that in the past. And so coming to terms with that, making sure they don't make the same mistakes again, and then him trying to figure out his hockey career. And I love a good hockey romance. I love a good second chance romance, so I ended up really enjoying this one. And those are all the books that I read in the second half of February. Let me know if you read any of these and what your thoughts are and what you read this month. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.